Hi, I'm Ali and a warm welcome to the Ceramic Repair Studio. So in today's video, I just thought I'd show you just a very quick demonstration on how I would just paint in this lovely vase actually. And it used to be as used as a lamp base. So you can see it already had a hole in there. I've fixed it by applying some Milliput and sanding, and I do have another video on this. Now it's nice and flat now, so it's ready for a bit of painting. Now I could use an airbrush, and I use airbrushes quite often, but I do realise that majority of people don't own airbrushes, so we're going to do this by hand, and it's fairly crude, so there's lots of different indentations, slightly different colours within the glaze. Just as easy to do some hand painting here. So before I do though, if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing at the end if you enjoyed the video, and also a thumbs up if you found it useful. And let's get going. Right, so what you'll need for this is a cup of water, and I've just got some kitchen roll here as well, and a variety of paints. And you can see this one's well and truly used. Different colours. I tend to use Winsor and Newton, the professional range. I do find the hue is a lot better, and so I tend to use those, but now and again I also use powder pigments. It just depends what colours I've got in to what colour I think I need to use on my item. Now I've also got some varnish here, which I like to varnish afterwards and also apply a little bit whilst I'm painting as well. Really finds it helps with the paint to adhere to the item. Now I also collect bottle tops, and these are great for mixing in paint and if glue as well, depending on what you're doing. So it's always worth collecting plenty of these to mix the paint in. And finally, I also have some brushes here. Now, the brushes I tend to use, you can see quite weather beaten, they tend to be ones which are sable brushes. They are softer and you do get a better point to them. Obviously, if you don't have sable, that's fine, but my favourite are sable brushes. And then I tend to use a kind of a flat brush at the end just to apply the finishing part, the final part, which is the glaze. So first of all, looking at the item here, I'm going to start off with the almost like a sort of a creamy colour. Once that's dried, we'll just add in a tiny little bit of the blue here. So I've also forgotten, have a cocktail stick, which is great for mixing in glue. Sorry, for mixing in the paint. So first of all, just looking at it, I think we'll start off with a base of white. And this one is titanium white, which is actually a very useful colour. So we'll just apply a little bit like so, and just put that back on. Now looking at it, I would say it's got a bit of brown in there as well. Now I do have one colour which I use all the time. As you can see, it's slightly dried up. It's yellow ochre, and it really knocks back a lot of colours. Such a useful colour, I would highly recommend it actually. Yellow ochre, and I'm just going to add a little bit to the white here. Now at this point I like to start to add a little bit of water as well, and it really is a case of just trial and error. Now you don't want the paint to be too thick, but obviously you don't want it to be too runny either, so you just want a really nice, almost a creamy consistency. And then I'm just going to add just a little bit of the varnish just to help lock it in. So I've got the varnish here. This is a Rustin's varnish. If you can't get hold of it, I would recommend Winsor & Newton. So just add a little bit extra in here. So just taking a tiny little bit, you don't need too much, and then just applying it in with the rest of the paint. And put the brush straight back into the water here, and also the lid obviously onto the jar, otherwise it will dry out. So let's give that some mix and see how that colour is. Maybe a tiny bit more water. As I say, it is trial and error. What you can do is just add get a tiny bit of your paint and then just add it to a little bit of the existing, and you can get an idea on colour. Now obviously that's too light, so you just wipe it off with your finger or even a piece of cloth here, and then just add in another colour, so make it a little bit darker. So I'm going to add just a little bit more of this ochre in here. And it may be even a little bit of black, just a smidge. And you just want to go in bit by bit. You don't want to be sort of too much. But again, you can always add to. All right, let's give this a mix. Let's say it does have plenty of colours. That's better, but it's I need it to be, I think it needs a bit of grey. So I'm going to add a little bit of black, just a tiny bit. A little bit goes a long way. And one of my favourite blacks is Mars Black. And so I'm using acrylics a lot easier than powder pigments. It's a lot easier in the fact that it's easier to blend in, and you're not trying to work through the lumps and bumps. So just add a tiny little bit of the black, just putting it onto the side there. So again, just make sure the lid is on. Right, so add a little bit of black there. As I say, trial and error. And then we just keep going along until we're happy with the colour. That's knocked it back to quite a grey colour. We can always add more cream in, but as I say, it has got different tones. All right, let's see what that looks like. So add to it. That's better, but it's still a bit on the dark side, so I'm just going to add a little bit more cream, more colour in there. So let's see what this looks like. It's looking a lot better, and that's literally almost there. Just a tiny, I think almost just a smidge more of the yellow ochre here. So just add a bit of the yellow ochre, and as I said before, it is just trial and error. You just got to keep going backwards and forwards. Give that a mix, and then just add a little bit. Now that's quite a good colour there. That's going to blend in. Looking at it, I'd almost add just a tiny bit more of the ochre, and I think we'll be there. Right, so adding that in, and just blend that through. Now that looks a pretty good colour to me. Add a tiny bit more water. If it starts to dry out, just keep adding a little bit more water. Just very lightly start to brush across. Take our item, and I'm just going to work within first. I can just sort of see bits and pieces, and you can slowly build up. So first of all, just start off very slowly. This is pretty good colour. Add in a bit there. Doesn't have to be perfect, because this item has got so many indentations on there and different tones. You can kind of get away with quite a lot. And because we've done it quite a light first coat, and to let it dry, it will dry very quickly. So once that's dry, we can then add another coat in. So looking there, and that's looking quite good. If you do find a few brush marks, that's fine. It all depends on the item. Obviously, if it's porcelain, it's a different sort of thing altogether, and it would be then, I would then use a airbrush. But because this is quite a crude piece of pottery, it's fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. So then just add a tiny little bit more there now it's dried. And then we'll just look, and then just slowly blend in. If you like, you can always use your fingers on the side, obviously depending on your item. And then just very slowly and lightly. You can almost brush the other way. If you find you do have any brush marks, just brush any lines out. Try not to add too much into the original, but obviously you do need to blend in. I think they'll just need one more small coat and then we'll be ready for the blue. So while that's drying on that coat, let's mix up the blue colour with just a little bit of these parts here. So again, I'm just taking my bottle top here, and I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use a bit of the ultramarine. Now I'm going to mix a bit of powder pigment with a little bit of acrylic, which I always find quite easy. So we're just going to take just a little bit with a cocktail stick. Where are we? Always have plenty of these. A little bit of the ultramarine deep this is. So add just a little bit of that. I do find the powder pigments are a bit more finicky when it comes to blending in, but it should be fine. So a little bit of the ultramarine. Then we're going to just add a little bit of the black here. Now again, this is the Mars black, so just a little bit there. As I say, a little bit goes a long way. I do like to tend to put it sort of on the edge because then you can add more bits too. And then once we've done that, we just take just a little bit of water and let's just mix up the ultramarine first and then add a little bit of the black. And if it's too dark, we can just add, again, a bit of the ultramarine. Again, it's just trial and error. Oh, that's looking quite a good colour. And at this point is when I would actually add in a little bit of the varnish. So again, with the varnish, take some here. Just use an old brush here, and then just add a little bit of varnish to our item. Right, so if we give that a mix, and then we'll just have a look to see how that colour would be if we just add on with a little bit of something else. That's a pretty good colour. So maybe just a tiny bit more of the blue. Right, so this is nice and dry now, so I'm just going to add one more coat, and then we should be done, ready for just adding the last bits of blue. So just mixing. Again, we can always add a bit of water if it starts to go a little bit on the thick side here. And this is just going to be a very final coat here, so just nice and light. So you don't want to go too heavy. Blending in. Again, try to not have any marks. Always good to have a good light when you're doing this as well. So if you can try to be by a window, that's even better. And that's pretty good actually, so I'm quite pleased with that. So once that's dry, we'll now apply the blue colour. So again, the mixture of the ultramarine and the Mars black. So just add a tiny bit here, and just going to use, I'm using quite a small brush here. As you can see, it's very crude, lots of different tones and ways, and then we're just gently going to start to paint. if you find it's too thick, you can always add a little bit more water. Right. And then just gently apply. So they're not perfect circles by any stretch of the imagination. So it's just adding little bits and pieces too. I can see here it's lost a bit of colour, so I'm just going to add a little bit in there as well. And if you can get to different angles, but obviously you don't want to overdo any of the original. Tiny bit there. So once that's dry, we're then going to add just a little bit of glaze just on the top, just to literally cement it in and protect it. We'll also give it a bit of a glaze. Now, when you have an item, if it's too glazed, if it's very glazed, I would just use the plain varnish. But if it's just a little semi-glaze, I tend to use varnish with water because it would varnish, but it tends to knock it back a bit and make it slightly dull. So this, I would say, isn't too varnished, it's just a little. So I'm going to take another one of these bottle tops. I'm going to add just a little bit of the varnish here. Always remember to close the top as well. Just add a little bit of the varnish, and then just a little bit of water as well, just to knock it back. And I'm going to use my flats brush and just add just a little bit, and then find where I've painted in, and then we're just literally just going to very, very gently apply the varnish. And you don't need very much. I'm just going to go along on a couple of the bits which I redid as well. So just a tiny, tiny bit. You don't want to be too much. And that would just actually help protect it. You don't want to keep going over with the varnish either. Otherwise, you will find you'll end up with brush marks. Do just a little bit in places. And so there we have it. So that's now ready to dry off. As I say, it's very crude, a lovely piece. And I hope you enjoyed the video, found it useful. Again, please consider subscribing and a thumbs up, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Okay, bye.